Larry Goldberg's with me because it is Monday and that's his slot. Larry, the the stock is down a little bit today, a little bit in the after hours too. In addition to wondering about the numbers that are coming out Wednesday, I think maybe the market is reacting a little bit to Musk getting back into politics and really railing against the big beautiful bill. What do you think?
Well, I have to admit that I think that Elon is right about the big, beautiful bill. The problem about Congress is this give and take. In order to take, you have to give. And so everybody tends to get what they want. And so you get every bill that's ever written has got not a compromise, but an idealization of both sides, most desirable stuff.
Their wish list, their bucket list, everything they can throw in. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. And so it becomes very difficult to design policy under these circumstances. And the margins are razor thin on both sides. So now that the Republicans are nominally in the majority, they can't get anything through the Senate without getting, at least some Democrats on side, because if the bill skews too conservatively, then they'll lose a whole lot of the liberal Republicans. If it skews too liberal, then they'll lose a whole lot of conservative Republicans. And then they're going to fight for support from the Democrat side. So we've seen this play out again and again and again and again. And I don't know how you break this pattern. I really don't. I don't think forming a new party is going to do it. I mean, it would have to be, and you cannot form a party in the teeth of this probably the most charismatic president in our lifetime. He now eclipses even Reagan and John Kennedy and so on. He is a legend in his own lifetime.
So
He
what about the other argument, Larry? I saw it, somebody posted, I didn't write down who it was, but they said he's proven that he could take care of the situation in Israel. He's proven he could take care that the tariffs are doing what they're supposed to do. I mean, they're working out. He's taking care of all these other issues. Today they arrested 253 people for Medicare fraud. I mean, just one thing after another, just going down the line, all these things go, and that this is the third leg of the stool, and it needs to pass, and that the Republicans need to just support their president.
Well, it's true that in his executive actions, he's achieving what probably very few presidents have achieved in the past. The problem is executive actions can be done and they can be undone. The next president can just, in a few squiggles of the pen or the order pen, could eliminate all of these executive actions. And if it's a Democratic president, the Republican president no longer has the spoiler capabilities of going to, shop a judge,
Right.
to invalidate that on a national basis. So ideally, you would want policies to be implemented in a bill, in an act of Congress. And clearly, he's not getting what he wants in this bill. I mean, he's getting some of the most desirable parts that he's very focused on, and that is, making the tax cuts permanent. That's very important to him. And then the election promises about tax on tips and so on. These he's getting, but at the same time, he's getting a tremendous expansion of expenditures by all of these, mandates that are handed down and expanded and expanded. And And so the result of that is, a very significant expansion of the deficit. And that's what is upsetting Elon, quite apart from the fact that he's cutting back all the, all the battery mandates and the
Right.
EV mandates, and he's expanding the assistance to the gas vehicle program, or he's alleviating the stress on them.
Right.
So, it doesn't bode well, and clearly Elon's not happy with it. I think Elon wouldn't mind the removal of the benefits for EVs if at the same time they would remove benefits for gas and oil.
He said
and
that.
yeah, and at the same time, the most important thing for him is a balanced budget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and who can argue with that? I mean, I have an in-depth study of the healthcare situation, which I'm going to be recording in the next couple of days. And it's quite clear that we are on we cannot maintain this path. The budget deficit is just going to grow simply because of healthcare.
Right.
Yeah. Healthcare alone causes this growth of the deficit. And we've spoken about this before. So there are reforms that have to be done on healthcare, that have to be done on student financing and financing of education in general. So healthcare, education, and then there's sort of this general category of deficit spending that goes across many, many, many branches of government, where government has become involved in activities which traditionally they never got involved in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I think Elon is right, but it would be tough if he were to go back into the political fray at this point.
That would be very tough. And I do think that the stock is moving a little bit lower in the after hours because of it. So the other thing, of course, is the numbers coming up on Wednesday. I know you're no longer in the guessing game about the deliveries or about the production. I've started to get in the guessing game about the deployments. So we know that we have 10 gigawatts possible out of Lathrop, and maybe 2.5 gigawatts possible from Powerwalls. Then we have the new facility in Shanghai, and that one is ramping up. I was figuring that maybe it's a quarter ramped up at this point.
Well, that's a stretch.
Well, Brian White, who will be on in a few minutes after this show at 7:45 tonight, Brian White thinks it's fully ramped because there was nothing to get in the way of it. Plenty of batteries right down the street.
Yeah, Brian is a little optimistic.
So anyway, I thought maybe we could hit 12 and a half. Maybe we could have 12 and a half gigawatts.
12 and a half is well within reach.
Yeah. And that would be, I think, a big surprise to the markets.
That would be a surprise, but it wouldn't offset the reduction in the reduction from deliveries, which are going to be very, very large. I mean, the handle is 2, there's no doubt about it. So we're not going to get a 3 handle. So, it's going to be a shock to the street and the stock could go down $20, $40, $50.
Okay. So you're thinking it could go into the 200s as a result of hitting what number do you think is the tipping point?
We're under 300.
Under 300. So you're part of that crew. All right. Because
I'm not part of the crew. I'm just saying if it goes under 300.
Okay.
I'm not guessing at all, but the potential for the stock decline is pretty large at this point.
Okay. All right. So you're thinking if some of the middle of the road numbers like 350 that might be okay with the market?
I think so. I think the market's already discounted down to 350, 370.
Okay.
But if you go much lower than that, the market is going to react, react reflexively.
Okay. All right. Okay. There was we're going to go on a really different road here now, Larry, because this is something that was a big post on X today, but it's way over my head. And I'm hoping maybe that it's just about at your head. So this was Tesla's Dojo simulator, and it has all kinds of words like spexism or spexum and other things like that. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what the heck they're talking about here. Larry, what is the importance of the Dojo simulator and the post that came out today about it from, I think, Tesla Economic? Tesla
Economics.
Yeah, right.
Tesla Economics.
Yeah.
Look, a simulator is something that appears to work the way the actual device is going to work. And you create the simulator to find out what's wrong in your design, what's right in your design, what are the things you can do to improve the design. A simulator is a digital twin of the real thing. So, for example, there are many firms that create a digital twin of themselves so that they can try, well, what happens if we increase the price here? Will the revenue drop here? What that'll do to our bottom line, but will our revenue go up here? Our margins will shrink, but what will it do to our bottom line? And what will the extra costs of improving that? All the normal what ifs.
Yeah.
And by creating a digital twin that acts like the real thing in all this multiple specificity of parameters, you can try different strategies to see what the end result will be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a lot of big words in the or a lot of foreign words to the normal person in the post, but essentially what they're describing is a product, an internal product
Mm-hmm.
for consumption by the team itself of what Dojo will do for a given set of code.
Mm.
And so once they create that simulation, just as in the firm, you could say, well, what happens if I increase the price of this? Or what happens if I reduce the price of that product? And what will it do in terms of volume? What will happen to the factory? What will happen to the costs of running the factory? And then what will the increase in revenue be? And then margins will shrink, but what will the bottom line do? And so on. It's exactly the same concept. You create a model, a digital model of what that computer will do in a given circumstance. Now, the computer is made up of many components. It's made up, firstly, of the processors, of the processors themselves. The processors are tiny, and there are many processors on one. It looks like a disk. It's a disk that normally a fabricator will make a lot of these processes on this huge disk, and then the disk will be cut up, and then those processes will be encapsulated in plastic, and then that's your normal integrated circuit, your normal, core memory, either your core memory or your processor. In the case of Dojo, the processor and memory are all created on this one huge disk, and there are multiple of these processors, and the memory is actually not on the same disk. It's on an additional layer. The two layers are put together. So instead of having a processor and a separate bunch of memory, you have this one enormous structure, which is processor and memory. And then what that does is enables many more calculations to be done simultaneously with communication one to the other at extraordinarily high rates, because they're connected directly to each other and directly to their own memory. Well, Dojo is made up of many of these disks connected to each other by a network. And it's a proprietary network that Tesla have invented. It's much faster. It's supposed to be much faster than ordinary Ethernet. So when you start adding all of these processors on one disk, all the memory connected to the directly to the processor, all these disks connected one to another, and then multiple of them in one cabinet, and then multiple cabinets strung together. What you've got is one very giant computer. The problem is that it starts becoming incredibly complex to program this. It's complex enough to program at the processor level when you have one processor. But when you have many tied together in such a complex arrangement, and you have all that memory connected to it, and you have all these Ethernet or these network connections, one to another, or cabinet to cabinet to cabinet. So you have this hierarchy of capabilities, and now you have to program it. And so you have to, when you program it, you have to make sure that a signal or a particular process that's happening on this chip, on this disk, in this cluster, that it happens at the right time, so that a calculation that's happening on another disk, in another cabinet with another processor happens in the right sequence to that. Well, you can imagine that complexity. What you don't want to do is you don't want to stand up this gigantic computer and start discovering what the problems are. So you create a digital twin of what it will look like, or what you planned it.
The computer itself.
And you try and see what it will do itself. Now, it won't run as fast. It won't run as many processes at the same time, anywhere in the same sequence. All of that stuff is going to be dramatically slowed down. But what it will do is enable the programmer to see all the things that are going to happen when he issues this set of commands.
Okay.
And that's the simulator. It's exactly the same as if you've set up your factory on a spreadsheet, you make a change to this input and you see what happens to that output. It's no different. It's just a very complex and much more layered and much more what is the word that I'm looking for? A much just dramatically more complex process and environment.
And it's
Now, they could have put it on a spreadsheet.
yeah.
It would have taken weeks and weeks to run, just one simulation. So they put it into a big computer, a single standalone computer, a very, very capable computer, used very capable programming skills to do it, but they managed to create this simulation of Dojo, and they're able then to, program the program that they're going to use on Dojo.
Right. Now, the article says that it makes training AI faster, catches bugs before they hit real problems, reduces delays in product launches, gives Tesla a huge edge over the car makers. So is that all just kind of assumed by what you just said, or is there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is the purpose of building a simulation before you build a computer.
Okay.
Not even building it before you build the computer. They're going to use that sim even when they have the computer up and running. Because it's so much cheaper to test your code on a simulation before you put it onto the big computer.
I see.
Now, it's a model of what will go onto the big computer. And there's a saying in our field, all models are wrong, but some are quite useful. And the whole idea of SpecSim is that it's very useful, that it does achieve a very close simulation that it can be used for, these test runs, or it can be used to test the code to see if there's any bugs in the code, in very simple terms, before the code is actually put onto the big computer and run at incredible expense compared to running it on the simulation. It's not going to give you the same results.
Yeah.
It's going to run for a dramatically shorter period of time with dramatically less processes, but it's going to give you a real sense of whether it's going to run end to end and complete, and whether it's going to give you, and what the problems are. There are always going to be problems, and what the problems are that it's going to be. I mean, it's not a lot different from what my firm used to do. I mean, we created models of the logic that the business wanted to use to calculate, a price for a product, or calculate a mortgage rate, or whether to determine whether a person should be given a mortgage, or whether to calculate whether somebody should get a loan. And what they would do is they would model the logic in one of our models, and then run a lot of tests of prior loans given, and see what the model tells them they would do, and what the likelihood loss rate on those loans would be, and compare that to real life. Well, it's not that far different from what's happening here. The paradigm shifts because what you're doing is you're testing, the generation of a neural network, and to see whether what you're generating is going to make sense, or whether it's going to generate without giving any errors, or without conditions occurring where some pieces of the calculation just never get into the Neuralink, get into the network, and are lost. Those kinds of things, and that's due to the hardware not functioning the way it's supposed to function.
All right, so I feel like I'm in one of my programs where I have Brian Wong on. So now it's my turn to ask you the question to see if I have it even remotely right. So where I might be setting up a model in my factory to determine how much plastic to use in a plastic water bottle, or how much, if I add more or less of this particular input, the output's going to be what over here before I ever do it. This is a step above that, where we're testing the computer's capability before we ever put in the test. Is that something close to right?
We're testing the code we've written for the computer, whether the code would work within the computer. And we're testing, it goes a higher level than that. We're testing the code that we're loading onto the computer to see that the code will run the computer correctly.
I see.
We know what the hardware is.
Yeah.
We know the kinds of programs we want to run on the hardware. Now we want to test the hardware to see if it'll run that code properly.
Right.
And then the higher order issue is to test the program to see that the way it's written doesn't cause a problem given the configuration of the hardware.
So this was obviously the author of this post believed that this was important. Is this something that you would assume that all the other folks are doing out there, or is this a new kind of thing that Tesla's doing?
Well, it's the kind of thing NVIDIA will do internally.
Okay.
They will test their configurations and their processes exhaustively, and they will test their CUDA language exhaustively to see that the pieces fit and connect with each other. And CUDA itself has some code that allows you to test your model before you actually load it onto a big, and it also has facilities to test the integrity of your very large, implementation of multiple processes. So CUDA has developed this kind of software, this testing software and the simulation software, over years and years with their evolving architecture. This is something that Tesla is doing for Dojo in order to be able to use Dojo in the most efficient way, and ultimately, I guess, to sell Dojo to other users.
Yeah, so they suggest on here that for Tesla, specism, is it specism? Is that how you say it?
Specism.
Specism is a
Yeah,
force multiplier. It speeds up everything behind the
that's
scenes.
right.
Better AI, fewer delays, smarter updates, and faster progress towards autonomy.
All of the above.
Okay, and then for investors, it means stronger margins. For fans, it means faster FSD updates.
I would say that it does for the future, but it doesn't change the actual base equation. And the base equation is currently they're using Dojo 1 and they're in the midst of planning to receive Dojo 2 and start to integrate Dojo 2. And so currently, there's no question that NVIDIA processors are advanced in relation to Dojo,
Right.
and they are currently probably the preferred platform, and that what's running on Dojo may be a secondary or a tertiary consideration. But they're building the building blocks towards implementing Dojo 2, which will take them to the next level. And then they believe that by the time they get Dojo 3, they're going to be ahead. They will have leapfrogged NVIDIA. We don't know. I mean, we can take Elon at his word, and I do, but we have, this is a future thing, and like all future things, it could be Dojo 4 before that happens.
Right.
We do know that from a energy consumption point of view, for inference performance, there's nothing on the market that currently beats AI 4, let alone AI 5, which is shortly to be sampled. And so we can have a fair degree of confidence that when Tesla says this is likely to happen, that it will happen.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's talk about the rollout in Austin again. Of course, I famously said I thought we would be at 488 by this week, or by Monday at the latest. And
Not quite.
yeah, I don't think we're going to get there. One of the things that, and I'm not trying to make excuses here, but as I'm trying to analyze why we're not moving that direction, why the FOMO hasn't occurred, why the folks aren't like, okay, now we get it, we need to buy stock now. And I looked at a ton of reporting about this over the weekend. And, we have a very, very bad system of reporting because the press is biased and negative. But what I did notice was this kind of sigh that there was a safety rider and that there was remote operators. And Elon kind of today agreed with Farzad that maybe it's even as high as 1-for-1 on the remote operators right now. So it was kind of for the folks who are not fanboys, people that might like Tesla well enough, maybe they've got FSD and they're reporters, that was kind of like, hey, we thought we were going to get unsupervised and it really isn't.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I've seen a lot of Tesla people pulling their hair out over the safety driver, which is kind of stupid in my view. I mean, Waymo had a safety driver, and then Ford before they canceled their attempt, and before that, Uber's safety driver famously ran over a lady and killed her. But
Not Uber, that was General Motors, Cruise.
no, 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 no. Cruise dragged a lady along the street
Yeah.
2 years or three
Oh,
years ago in
okay.
yeah. So it was absolutely clear to me that any implementation would require a safety driver at first. I don't know why people are surprised by that. I certainly wasn't surprised by it. I kind of expected it. So yeah, I don't see why anybody should have been surprised, but maybe you're right.
So you've driven thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of miles, and I'm pretty sure that I have you correct here. You've also gone down to Austin and ridden around in the cyber cab or the robo taxis down in Austin. I think in your, I don't want to misquote you, but I think you feel like there's no reason at all that a few weeks from now, a month from now, 2 months from now, if Elon is correct, we will probably not have that safety rider. I call it the safety rider. And we will be down to maybe 3 or 4 to 1 on the ratio for the remote
Right.
control guy. And that we'll just go from there, and it'll just keep getting stronger and stronger, and that Elon's not crazy to think we could have hundreds of thousands or millions of vehicles on the road 18 or 24 months from now.
I'm fairly confident of all those facts. I think you're right on target. I don't see. I mean, if things continue improving at the rate at which they're improving, I think that is a fair statement. I wish we would get an update to our Model 3s and Cybertrucks and Model Y, or the
Right.
sorry, the whole fleet. I wish we'd get updates to the fleet. I'd love to be updated to the current version they're running in
Yeah.
Austin. Now it's really, really good. I mean, not that the current Model 3s and Model Ys and Model S's aren't really great at this point, and X's, I guess. My Cybertruck's not yet updated to that level, and I wish it would be. But I'm much more patient than most guys who post, moaning and complaining and belly aching. I'm comfortable. I'm impatient, but I'm comfortable.
Yeah. Well, Larry, we're old, so we can afford to be more patient. Or wait, isn't it the opposite?
I was going to just say, I don't know about that. I don't know.
So the other thing is we've got the whole what do you call it, the big beautiful bill again, which the Republican version of it has the end of the $7,500 credit coming in September rather than the House version, which comes in December. Either way, it would seem like it will create a massive uptick in purchases during the upcoming 1 or 2 quarters as people try to get their cars ahead of the loss of that benefit.
It's possible.
So right now, I don't see anybody modeling that. All the models are looking at 1.6 million as being kind of the total for the year. But if there is if people do start running out to get the deal, it seems like that number would start to move up.
I think a bigger catalyst on actual volume of sales is not that 7,500 that people will dash to. I think the bigger catalyst is when we see FSD, when we see unsupervised FSD in the wild, just like we saw with the delivery of that vehicle. I mean, that is such a game changer. That is so dramatic that I think that will be a much bigger catalyst than all the other factors put together.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I've been talking about that for a few months now, that the move to unsupervised will be the one for sure you're going to go show your neighbor again. You may not have shown him, you may not have asked him to take a ride with you for the last year, but when you can both sit in the back seat and let the car take over, that is going to be something you're going to want to go show your friends and neighbors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Model Q. Today's the day, Larry. It's going to be announced any minute.
Yeah, I was just pulling up my X to see if it had been announced yet. Still not there, but I'm sure it'll be there in the next half an hour.
So we have some people.
Maybe it's just been delayed because Elon has sworn to primary all these members of Congress.
He's going to start a new party and primary everybody that votes for the big, beautiful bill.
Yeah.
Well, so I have a couple of people on X today that were trying to give Elon a pass, saying, no, they only promised that they would start production of the Model Q. They didn't promise they'd reveal it.
It's quite possible they've started production, but I would have thought we'd see some, some evidence of that. We haven't seen evidence of that.
So what about the picture the other day, Larry? Did you?
Come on.
No,
didn't do it. Was a Y, probably a 6-seater Y or a 7-seater Y.
So it didn't look like a two-door to you.
Nah.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm terrible at that game. I'm not very good at making these perceptive differences. So I've been letting other people make that guess for me. So you have to know what you're good at and what you're not good at, Larry.
Yeah. Well, I'm not terribly good at it, but I'm skeptical of all claims until I get better proof. And so it's just my skepticism coming out, not some ability to see behind the black curtain.
Well, the other thing, the market was up today, but I think it was probably a little constrained in its enthusiasm, also because of the BBB, where it looks like the Republicans are gonna fight tooth and nail to keep us on the edge of our seat until the 3rd of July at midnight or something. I don't know what they're.
I mean, it's just, it's a mystery. It's a mystery. I mean, it's not a mystery. We know how Congress works. We know the balance of Congress. And so it needs to, we need a big change in this country. In the meantime, New York is voting in a socialist mayor.
Yeah, I know. I think we talked about that a little bit on Friday.
We did. But it doesn't.
It's frustrating.
Yeah, it's worth decrying it yet again.
Well, it turns out he's not just a socialist. He's an anti-Semite. He's pro-Hamas. He believes in intifada internationally and won't even walk it back when he's asked 15 times by a reporter, couldn't you just say that you're not against international intifada? And he wouldn't, he said, oh, well, that's not different words. He wouldn't specifically say that he wasn't in favor of that. And I'm like, what are you even talking about? And how could you possibly be in the running?
You should have been asked what he thinks of this poor woman who died from her burns today, from the attack on those Jews I mean, the hate that is being generated is just incredible. And I listened to the State Department press it today, and one guy asked, I thought that the visas, that whether you grant a visa or not is supposed to be secret, and now you've announced that you're not going to give this guy who
rock star
went onto the stage in Gloucester and talked about kill the Jews is basically what he said.
Yeah.
And this reporter said, how can you do that? Break the confidence. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, guys.
Is there any point at which, Larry, I always love to have you on because we could talk. We may be the only people on air that can talk about this the way we do because of my background in the Jewish community. Is there some point at which your friends and family members who are liberal Jews will finally see that President Trump, who today sued Harvard because of the anti-Semitic behavior there, has helped Israel to win the war and now advance the Abraham Accords to probably to Syria and Saudi Arabia, and in the meantime, we've got the liberals coming out with these kill the Jews, and we've got a liberal running now for the mayor of New York who apparently supports Hamas. Is there some point at which you think some of the family members and the others will start to go, whoops?
I can't generalize this because there are definitely family members of mine who are absolutely comfortable, have become absolutely comfortable with Trump.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Even though they disagree quite strongly with some of his views. But there are others that, under no circumstances and whatever. I mean, I'm sitting at a, family affair the other day, and somebody said, "Oh, I believe that the Tesla broke all the rules of the road and it was a disaster and the stock went down 7%. I said, "I was there."
Yeah.
You read it. You read a news. I was there.
Right.
Oh, this person says to me, and I don't want to mention who, in our family, says to me, "Oh, I read an independent press report that's completely nonpartisan." Right, says I. I mean, these people believe, they believe what they're reading is the truth.
Yeah. Well, my wife is an English professor, and that's English literature primarily. And she spent 6 days, I think, in DC in a seminar where they were studying some of the newly revealed new diaries and new pieces of work that they had found in some of the buildings in various parts of Europe from the Holocaust period. And there's a kind of a sense when you're in that when you're studying that period of how many Jews they just, can I say, let it happen? Can I say just capitulated? And I feel like we're just living it again.
Well, the point is they never believed anything. They never conceived anything like this was possible. And then as it crept up upon them, it's kind of like the frog in the boiling in the water I mean, as the heat got turned up, they got used to this level of heat, then that level, and then it was tickets.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the number of people who failed to leave in time is just incredible. Just incredible.
Yeah. All right. To talk about something far less controversial, although I'm not sure, BYD financials are in the news again. This time they have some financials out that indicate, or that depending on who you listen to, AJ says it looks like they're making less than $500 a vehicle.
Yeah.
Stephen Mark Ryan says they're losing $500 a vehicle, but wherever that is in that range, it looks really, really bad. And multiple people now are saying that this could disrupt the supply chains in China that could even impact Tesla. So what did you think about all that?
Well, I did read the post that was made today and I'm trying to recall it, and so I'm trying to look it up and there were some serious errors in that analysis. I mean, quite serious errors. Mm-hmm. Mistaking debt for cost.
Okay.
But AJ's done a very, very, very serious analysis. And the truth is, it's more an issue of, AJ's analysis is pretty correct, they're making extremely small margins, and the margins that they're claiming are not real.
Mhm.
And they are selling brand new cars as used cars. They are selling themselves the cars, and then they're selling that car as a used car at a significantly marked down number. So that's an old trick that the German manufacturers have been using for years.
Oh,
I was going to do a study on that because I have some really good information from some good friends in Europe. And I ended up not doing it because, it kind of reflects upon BMW and Mercedes and more than any other companies, and also Volkswagen as well. And that's just not my style. I really like to, analyze where Tesla is and not where the others are. So
yeah.
I kind of stood back from it, but it looks like the Chinese have adopted that particular approach, and they're dumping these vehicles, if this post is correct,
Right.
if what I've read is correct, and they're dumping these vehicles in Europe, which is very serious. It's very serious for the US manufacturers, but it's much more serious for the European manufacturers.
Yeah,
And for the Japanese and Korean.
yeah, and I'm guessing that you've seen this story before too in your business dealings. I know I have, where a company is growing way beyond its financing. And then it has to keep growing at that rate. It can't slow down the growth, because then all of a sudden the payables go even older, because there's not enough cash coming in now to pay they're at 260 days. And now all of a sudden you don't have any cash, so you can't even pay them in 260 days. It goes to 290 days and then 320 days. So, and at some point you break your suppliers. Or the company goes under and breaks the suppliers. And I've seen that happen multiple times in my career. This looks to be what may be happening over there.
Yeah, the article I was referring to comes from Muskonomy.
Oh, it was again, twice in one day.
Yeah. No, that was, no, you were thinking about Teslanomics.
Teslanomics, that's
Yeah,
right.
no, Muskonomy, they're, as best I can make out, they're mistaking debt for expense.
Okay.
In other words, when they force the supplier to lend them money for a year,
Right.
this article tends to mistake that as
expense.
as no as hiding an expense, as
Okay.
if they haven't expensed that money
Yeah.
because they don't have to pay it, because they avoid having to pay it back for 6 months or a year. They don't expense it.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think that's what's happening. I think that the expense is actually coming onto the book because their working capital deficit wouldn't rise unless they were reflecting it as an expense.
I see.
And the article begins by showing the working capital deficit rising dramatically.
I see.
So he's confusing, putting off the evil day of having to pay,
Right.
or actually showing a higher gross margin than is actually being earned. On the other hand, when you force your creditors to finance you,
Right.
then you are effectively avoiding a very significant interest expense,
Right.
or a very effective increase in cost of that good, because suppliers would want to charge more. But, I mean, the working capital deficit is very expensive. Now he talks about hidden, it is very serious, but it's not an expense. Then he talks about the 85.51 in hidden order costs. Well, he's talking about costs of 20,000 won hidden cost per car. Now, that hidden cost is not paying the vendor.
Uh-huh.
No, they're bringing that cost to book.
Yeah.
But they're just not paying it when it's due.
Right.
That's a whole different thing.
Right.
So I'm not buying what he said without further investigation, and I will do further investigation. And the way I'll do it is pull up AJ's study and delve into deeper, and we can talk about it either to AJ or we can talk about it between ourselves once I've done that analysis.
Right, right. You might also look at Stephen Mark Ryan's numbers last night. Stephen
Yeah.
Mark Ryan is quite competent as a financial
Analyst. Yeah.
now.
No, I agree. Yes, yeah.
All right. Well, Larry, I promised to get you out of here by 3 o'clock on this Monday afternoon. So I'm going to put us on pause because I'm going to get those numbers in a couple of minutes and let everybody see what the numbers are going to be for tomorrow. So as always, thank you for dropping by and helping us to figure this, especially that science stuff, Larry, because, you know.
It wasn't really science stuff. It's really quite practical stuff.
Okay, computer science stuff. How's that?
Well.
All right, Larry, thanks so much. Before we get to the numbers, let's take a look at this from Murano Kimi 2. He asked Grok, he showed Grok a picture, which I'll show you in a minute. He asked Grok, what is this image? What is this picture? And Grok says the car in the image is likely the Tesla Model Q, a new affordable EV expected in 2025. It's described as smaller and lighter than the Model 3 with a price below $30,000. All right, so here we go. Here's the picture. Well, I'm just going to do the show more here for a second. I'll take a chance that I won't screw up. Okay, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, here is the car. This was from today's report by Tesla, their annual report, where they talk about all the things that they're doing in terms of the environment and what they're doing in terms of hiring and firing, et cetera. And this picture was in that, and Murano Kimi has blown it up. And so you've got this picture here. Now, this reminds me a little bit of that picture that Larry, was so quick to say wasn't the product the other day, or just a few minutes ago. It's a two-door car. It has that same very abrupt ending at the back of the car. It is not a gull wing or a butterfly wing door like the Cybercab. So and Grok says this is it. So it'd be pretty funny if Tesla used their annual report as the way to sneakily do a reveal, and Murano Kimi would be the one who would get credit for having seen the actual product. Anyway, we'll see if that's the case or not. In a couple of days we'll have all that figured out. So let me stop sharing, and then let me pull up the numbers real quick. Let's go ahead and look at where Tesla is now. Again, I think there's no doubt that as Elon continues to say that if the big, beautiful bill passes, the very next day he will start a brand new party. Now, it's one thing, okay, great, he wants to start a new party. That's been done before. Okay, all great. Except if he's going to start a new party, guess what everybody's thinking? Oh, it's going to distract him. It's going to take his time away. He's going to be more concerned about that than he is about finishing all these jobs. And again, I'm saying, he can do a lot of things at once, but what we have definitely seen over the last 2 weeks is we've seen a more engaged Elon, a lot more things happening and getting done at all the companies, not even just at Tesla. And I don't think the stockholders or the fanboys like me would want to see him also, going off on yet another quixotic vision over just this big, beautiful bill. I think that, again, he may have very strong opinions about it and really feel like it's a super important time. Elon, if you watch my program, if anybody wants to send this on to him, Elon, this big, beautiful bill isn't the hill to die on. This is not the hill to, believe me, pick another hill to die on. Right now, give your buddy, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, give him what he needs to get the rest of his planned campaign approach. Let him get it done. Let him get it finished. Let him get it fixed. Unless you want to lay out specifically what you want done in the bill, if you want, put it out tomorrow. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the things that need to change, and I'm okay with the bill. And then, you've got your voice heard. And then if it doesn't happen, you have to lick the wounds and move on. Most of the party wants Trump to get this done so we can move on to the next part of the plan. All right, now let's go look at the numbers. And as I was just mentioning, I believe that this is definitely impacting the stock after hours here. We are now down to 311.78 at $1.85 1.85 negative in the after hours, after 1.89 negative during the regular hours. And Larry's pronouncement that we might be down into the twos when the numbers are not so great on Wednesday, because they're not going to be great. The question is how not great, or how close will they come, let's say, to 350 as opposed to 300, or will they be 370 or 375, which probably would be a positive result. Anyway, but the headlines are also saying that the drop right now is more about Musk's decision to start making promises that he might intend to keep. All right, let's go ahead and look at where we are on the rest of the numbers here. We have got, oops, hit the wrong thing again. Did that this morning too. Here we go. We have got the bonds, which have not yet started pre-trading, market moves, but for the day, they did get down to 4.232. And so that's a good thing. 4.232, very, very good number. Happy with that. Then we've got the dollar mixed right now, actually up a little bit, maybe because the bonds are down so much. Typically, the dollar goes in the opposite direction. We've got oil down another 15 cents, so we're under 65 again now, 64.96. Natural gas slightly picking up, back up a little bit, 0.03% to $3.45. Gold up $6.50 at 33.14. Silver unchanged at this hour. Copper unchanged at this hour. That's interesting. They're both unchanged, but copper still above $5 and silver almost to 36. So it's still way up there. Both of them are still way, way up there. You've got the Bitcoin down to 60 at 107,237. And you got, here we go with the equities. The Dow down 0.08. You got the S&P down 0.07 and the NASDAQ down 0.06. But, the S&P ended up in strong shape today at over 6,000. Right now, sitting at 6,250. So at some point today, it was 100 points over the all-time high. So that's pretty darn good. Okay. I think that's all I got for you right now, except to say that Brian White will be on later. Very good show. I felt that when we ended the show earlier today, it was one of the best shows that he and I had ever done together. So I highly recommend you watch it. A lot to do with Robotaxi. We talk about other things. That'll be on later tonight. All the normal stuff tomorrow. Yeah, Phil Beisel. Did you watch? Everybody seemed to really like the Phil Beisel effort that I did yesterday. Phil and I did. That was on yesterday. I'll put that card up right here if you want to go back and check it out. Okay, that's it. And it's been great talking to you.